Hello everyone. Thanks for joining me for tonight's episode. Tonight I'll be narrating a story from one of my subscribers. And again, as always, I remind you all to please be mindful and respectful in the comments field below. Sharing your personal stories is not always the easiest thing to do, so please take into consideration the time that these individuals spent writing out these stories and sharing them with us. And to the ones who submitted the stories over to me, I just wanted to give you another thank you for the content that you've provided. And of course, you guys will remain anonymous, and slight details and the names of the individuals within these stories have been altered to protect everyone's identity. So please sit back, put on a good pair of headphones or speakers, and let's begin. Listening to ghost stories and experiencing these situations yourself are two very different things. Everyone's tough up until they are faced with a situation that has no rhyme or reason, no logical explanation of what actually took place. In 2003, my parents had bought a new house. This was a tri-level home. I was in my sophomore year in high school. And like every teenager, I enjoyed going out a lot. Instead of coming home to finish homework first, I'd be out and about with friends or my girlfriend and didn't come home until late. Things with this new house were fine overall. That was until a few months in, when my family and I started noticing strange noises in the middle of the night. Out of the few unexplainable happenings around the house when we still lived there, there was a distinctive night that stood out more to both my younger brother and I, however. So one day, after school, I drove to go see this girl in whom I used to date. We didn't get to see each other on a daily basis. Our relationship wasn't technically a long-distance relationship, but she did live about an hour away from me, in which did cause some inconvenience for the both of us on certain nights. That night, however, we got into a huge argument. Sad thing is, I don't even really remember what about. But after I had left her house angry, I decided to come home extra late. Being so upset, my mind and body just wanted to be somewhere else. I decided to take all the back roads home and drove down what seemed to be endless fields of the countryside. The feeling was exhilarating, and for a short time at least, I felt a sense of calm, seeing the cornfields and the occasional sights of cows and horses on these roads as the sun began to set. It was definitely one of those moments where you kind of wish that the stretch of road just kept on going. But it eventually got dark, really dark, and the calming feeling went away. I was the only car on the road now, and I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that I started feeling anxious. You ever have one of those moments where you replay alternate endings or scenarios in your head on if, let's say, your car eventually just died on you in the middle of nowhere in the dark? You know, the kind of shit you'd see in those typical horror movies. Luckily though, after just a few more miles, I reached the main road and the lights of the city came back into view. When I eventually got home, it was a little after 1 a.m. I was still upset over the argument, so I didn't care to do my homework. All I wanted to do was crash into my bed face first. Just to give you a brief description, my room was the only room on the lower level, and then there were another set of stairs that led down to the actual basement of the house. Everyone was fast asleep. All I could hear was silence. The kind of silence you hear when you can't fall asleep. As I laid in my bed thinking about what happened between my girlfriend and I, all of a sudden, I heard a high-pitched sound that rang loudly into one ear and out the other. At this moment, I felt the strands of hair on my body all begin to raise up. My heart started beating rapidly as well. And then just a few seconds later, I then heard a noise coming from the basement. My best description of the sound that I heard was as if someone had a metal folding chair and dragged it slowly across the room, grazing it against the cement of the basement floor. It began to sound like it went in the same direction, a repetitive lap, like a circle around the basement for a few rounds before eventually coming to the stairs and paused. The sound came to a halt, and then the sound of heavy footsteps proceeded to come up the staircase. It started off slow, and then the pace started to pick up. I didn't know what the hell to think. It couldn't have been anyone from my family because who the hell would be up at this time of night? I then even began to wonder if I was just hearing things, but it was very much real. My intuition had me convinced. I was frozen in place with the shivers, but had drops of sweat rolling down my face and back. I was terrified. I remember pulling my blanket and throwing it over myself to cover my whole body. I just laid there and pretended to be asleep. The sounds of the footsteps grew louder as they seemed to have been coming towards my room. Being an idiot, I had forgotten to close and lock my door. You see, on most nights I did, but on occasion, I would leave my door cracked open just a bit, also because my little brother, who was about 6 at that time, liked coming into my room to play video games on my PC. But all of a sudden, I felt a sudden presence in my room, and it felt sinister. I can't explain it, but this so-called sixth sense, it's real. I mean, you hear stories about it all the time, but like I said, when it's you in the actual situation, things are totally different. It's as if your body has a way of sensing these types of things. And though I didn't dare pull my blanket down to review to my eyes what or who was there in my room with me, I felt its presence next to my bed, and that was enough for me. All I could do at this point was close my eyes as I held my breath, trying my best not to breathe or make any noises. Even though I never peeked out from under my blanket, I felt the energy of a heavy presence standing next to me. It seriously felt like a figure was staring right at my face, like they were crouched down towards me, just standing there. Kind of like when an adult crouches over to scold a child after doing something bad. That's all I could picture in my head. The only thing was, whatever this entity was, I felt the eyes on me the entire time, and it never moved. Whatever this thing was, it stayed there with me for about a good 10 minutes or so. And then I heard it slowly start to retreat. I started hearing the footsteps again as it made its way back down the hall and then back down to the basement. All I could remember during this time was Me repeating to myself again and again, I'm sorry. I won't stay out so late anymore. I would like to think that this somehow worked, seeing as the entity had retreated. The freaky part is that I don't remember falling asleep. It was like, as soon as I did, I was already awake. The sunlight peered its way into my room, causing me to wake up. I laid there for a few minutes, thinking about all that had happened from the previous night. I even began to wonder if it had all just been a dream. I then sat up in bed, rubbing my eyes as I attempted to yawn. That's when I caught a glimpse of my door, and it was wide open. I gulped. This shit was real. That's when my little brother came marching into my room, catching me off guard. He made his way over to my PC to start it up to play games. I asked him, "Hey, last night, did you remember hearing anything?" Like what? He responded, "You know, like footsteps going up and down the stairs in the middle of the night?" I said. He then turned around and responded with, No, not last night, but sometimes I do."
Sometimes? What do you mean by sometimes?
And then, like the little kid that he was, he just shrugged his shoulders, and I just assumed that he just didn't know how to explain it to me. That's when I proceeded to tell him of my creepy encounter from the previous night. As soon as I got to the part where the supposed entity was staring at me, my little brother stopped me and said, "It was the old man." My little brother then paused his game and turned around to look me in my eyes. "He comes and stares at me at night sometimes too." And from that day on, I started to go to bed earlier, and I always remembered to lock my door.